In this session, we'll have a look at the Stata Interface. Please be mindful that I'm using a Mac version of Stata and there are some slight visual differences to the PC version. The main difference is how some windows are displayed and how they can be customized. So let's go to Stata and take a first look. Welcome to Stata. The first time you open Stata, you'll probably see something like this. This is Stata's primary program window. It may be subdivided into up to 5 parts depending on which version you're using, PC or Mac. Here in the middle we have the results window. This window displays all output. This window is very important because it presents all your results. However, the physical interaction with this window will probably be limited. You can interact with blue text that you see, but it's quite rare. You can highlight text by left-clicking and then right-clicking to see specific options for what you selected. Most of these will be copy options. You can also right-click anywhere without highlighting text to set preferences such as colors or font size. At the bottom, we have the command window. This is how you interact with Stata. Any commands that are typed here and then entered will be displayed and executed in the results window. Here's an example. In this case, the command was unrecognized and Stata returned an error message. That's fine. To the right of the results window, we have the variable window. This shows us all our variables in our dataset. We can right-click to interact with selected variables here, although this is generally not the preferred way to manage variables. Currently, there are a few options because we don't have any data loaded. Below the variable window, in the bottom right-hand corner, is the variables properties window. By default, this is locked, as you don't want to accidentally change variable properties. This can have severe consequences. We can unlock it by pressing on the lock button and relock it like so. I find that I rarely use this particular window. We can change the size of both of the windows by dragging them left or right. Left and right. Finally, if you're using a PC version, then on the left-hand side of the screen you might have a review window that shows you all your previous commands. Again, generally the interaction with that window is low, but you can double-click on previous commands to repeat them. If you're using a Mac like here, then that window won't be there. You can get to that window by changing the window setting up here. And here's the history of all the commands that we wrote. And we can return back to the variable window by clicking on this button over here. At the top will be the menu options. The menus include File, Edit, Data, Graphics, Statistics, Window, and Help. The majority of the menus are pretty self-explanatory and don't need much explanation at this point. One menu I would like to point out is the Window menu. Let's click on that. The Window menu allows you to bring back any Stata windows that you accidentally closed. And also it allows you to access Stata's specialized window. Here's an example of me closing a window and bringing it back again. Let's say we close this, and now we can bring back the variables window by going to the Window menu and clicking on Variables. And there it is again. Stata also has a toolbar of commonly used features up here. A lot of these will refer to more specialized windows such as the Viewer, the Data Editor, the Do-File Editor, and the Graph Editor. It's actually in these specialized windows that will do most of our interaction with Stata. Lastly, let's have a quick look at Stata's preferences. We can access Stata settings by clicking on the Edit menu and then the Preference option if we're using Windows. If we're using a Mac, we'll need to go to the Stata menu up here and then click on Preferences. Here we see 3 different types of preferences: General Preferences, Graph Preferences, and Language Preferences. Let's click on General Preferences. Under General Preferences, we have different tabs. Here we can set and change different preferences. There are General Preferences, there are preferences for highlighting syntax, there are Window Preferences, Internet Preferences, and Save Preferences. On the Internet Preferences, if you are behind a firewall, here you can specify a proxy server that allows Stata to connect to the internet through your firewall. you may need to contact your IT administrator to set this up. On the Window Preferences tab, we can edit the preferences of the various Stata windows that we see. So for example, here are the preferences for the results window, and we can choose a different color scheme. Let's click on Standard. That will now apply the standard color scheme. Let's revert back to using the dark color scheme. Most of these options are fairly self-explanatory. However, one notable mention I would like to make is the scrollback buffer size. The scrollback buffer is the space in the results viewer window. If you have a lot of output, you'll probably fill your screen with lots of results, and some of your results will disappear from the top. In most programs, you can scroll back up to find that output. The same happens with Stata, but you can only do it to around 200 kilobytes of data by default. This means at some point you might lose access to some of your prior results. I therefore recommend setting this to its maximum value of 2000, which will increase your ability to see prior results in your results viewer by 10 times. I recommend going through some of these options in your own time, but Stata has a lot of customizability. Finally, let me just go back to preferences one more time and just talk about the graph preferences a little bit. In the graph preferences, you can change the default color scheme of your graphs. Most of the time, you probably may not want to touch these, but here on the scheme, you can choose different types of graph schemes that allow you to change how the default graphs are generated in Stata. We'll talk about this more in the graph sessions. And finally, for those people who really want to customize Stata and modify everything, including what's under the bonnet and in the engine of Stata, Stata has something called the set command. We can type set in our command window, execute that. This will give us access to a wide range of settings that define Stata's default behavior. These settings include memory settings, output settings, program settings, random number settings, and many more. I'll leave it to you to explore these by yourself. Usually the set command is used by experienced Stata users, but knowing it's there is half the battle. And that concludes this quick overview of Stata.